Hello, this is Daniel King reporting on the first of the FIDE Grand Prix tournaments that's just started in London. There's a tremendous lineup. There are simply no weak players in the tournament at all. For example, Ivanchuk, Grishuk, Topalov, Giri, Leko, and so on. It's a brilliant field. There were some great tussles in the first round, but only one decisive game, and that was in the encounter between Hikaru Nakamura from America and Gelfand from Israel. Of course, Gelfand had played the World Championship final against Anand earlier in the year, and we can see that he used his preparation from that match very well in this game. It was a Sveshnikov variation of the Sicilian that he employed to such good effect in that match, and well, I think Nakamura was maybe a little surprised, and he didn't play a very sharp system against this. And Gelfand's got a pretty reasonable position out of the opening, but okay, we join the game after 37 moves, and as is so often the case in the Sveshnikov, Black has tremendous control over the dark squares. You can see that bishop and these pawns really control White's pawns here. They're beautifully blockaded. But of course White has very good control over the light squares. You can see this light squared bishop running around the board very nicely. So it's opposite colour bishops, one on the light squares, one on the dark squares. Very often that can mean that the position has drawish tendencies, but as we'll see, it all depends on positional factors, whether things are going to drift to a draw or not. Let's see what happened. By this stage, by the way, Gelfand was in severe time pressure. He was down to something like a minute for his last 10 moves. So, you know, he wasn't finding it easy, and maybe that's what lulled Nakamura into a false sense of security here. In this position, Gelfand very bravely, when he's short of time, he seized the moment and advanced this e-pawn. This is a good move, because it really forces White to take strong measures in this position, which Nakamura did not do. He went to sleep here. He played bishop g4. As we'll see, that's a mistake. He should have played rook e1, as both players said after the game. Now the point, of course, is that the rook is threatening the pawn. This much we can see. Well, Black can prevent this, but only by exchanging all the rooks. And generally that can make life a bit easier when you're trying to defend with opposite colour bishops. So let's take a look. So rook f8, that really has to be played, otherwise rook f7 was coming. Now if the rook steps to the side here, then Black can play rook f4, just holding the position, and then, well, given half a chance, you could bring the king into the centre, and Black is looking pretty good there. So White really should trade rooks in this position. I mean, that's what he needs to do anyway. And now here, pawns are even, but White has to be careful because his pawn majority on the queen side is blockaded, whereas Black has a pass pawn here and the potential to create a second pass pawn on the king side. But I think White can draw this quite comfortably, actually. Okay, so first of all, king f2, threatening king e3 to take the pawn. So Black has to take measures. So bishop c5 check. So the king goes up. And now, well, for example, if Black brings the king up, then we play king f4. So the pawn is threatened. It must advance. Then we bring the bishop back to stop the pawn advancing. And here I think it's very, very difficult for Black to make any progress at all. Let's play king f6. Well, White can probably just wait here. Let's say h5, but the bishop blockades. The king can't break into the position. It would be great if the king could get here and somehow win this pawn, but the king isn't breaking through. This bishop needs to guard the pawn, and basically nothing is happening in this position. It should be a draw. But Nakamura went to sleep, and he played bishop g4. After the game he said, maybe he was trying to win, or he had some notion of keeping winning chances alive, but this was a blunder. h5, excellent move, forcing the bishop back. And now rook f6 was played by Gelfand. He probably should have played rook f5 here, but okay, he was down to his final few seconds. And now he played rook f5. Okay, it's a very good move. The idea is that he wants to double on the f-file. That's very clear. And the problem for white is if the rooks are exchanged, then it connects black's pawns, as we'll see in a second. So, okay, Nakamura played bishop d1. They'd reached the time control. So Gelfand had time to think. Rook f8. And now things are really, really serious. If white waits, for example, with bishop c2 in this position, then, well, black has kind of a winning attack. The king is actually very exposed, so the king has to go back. Now rook f3, threatening mate, so white has to exchange. Now this is a terrible position, absolutely terrible. Let's say here, rook here, and you're simply threatening rook h3, and then a killer bishop c5. It's very often the case that in positions with opposite coloured bishops, that if there are major pieces on the board, rooks, especially queens, but even with rooks, as you see here, can often give you a very, very strong attack, because these bishops can't be exchanged. This bishop on d6 can't be challenged by a bishop here, so this makes this attack absolutely lethal. So in this position, Nakamura, to avoid any threats, had to play rook takes f5. By the way, probably Gelfand can even force this exchange on f5 by playing bishop b4 on the next turn, if white were to wait here. But okay, Nakamura just exchanged on f5. At least he thought, well, I'm grabbing a pawn. So white is even a pawn up in this position. But the point is, well, there are two things that make this actually a winning position for black. Okay, first of all, the blockade. These two pawns and the bishop blockade white's four pawns. They're not going anywhere. And the second thing is that we have connected pass pawns in the centre of the board, and these really are mobile. This is the essential difference between the two positions. And this h-pawn is, well, it's not going anywhere. Okay, so king f6. King marches up the board. Good stuff. Well, maybe Nakamura has the idea to push this, but let's see what happened. Here, well, it's actually, I think, possible just to play here and then push the pawns with the support of the king on e5, for example, and play f3. I'm sure this is winning. But Gelfand played almost in a kind of safety first way. He played king g5. Actually, this is a very clean way of handling the position. So the bishop goes back. Now king h4. So there is no danger of any counterplay with the h-pawn. And the pawns are held on the light squares, which controls the bishop actually. This bishop simply cannot get in the game, partly because it's controlled, well, it's blocked by its own pawn, and partly because these pawns, the enemy pawns, block the bishop out of the game. Okay, rook f1 played. Gelfand checked. The king went back. Well, you can see if king here, again, there could be a very, very nasty attack in this position after bishop here. And let's say here, and well, I mean, this variation, it's even checkmate. So the king came back. Now, okay, take care. The rook threatens the pawn, but as long as we hold these pawns, everything's fine. Yeah, that's a very careful move, actually. If the pawn had advanced, then that gives white a little bit of hope, because suddenly the bishop enters the game and has has some support on g4, but no, rook g5, very careful indeed. It's a good move. White can do nothing here, and Gelfand simply took the pawn on h3, so it's a very cool way of playing the position. And now all black needs to do is trade rooks, as we'll see. So that's the point of these moves. So rook g4, and he simply wants to play rook h4 and trade. He could also perhaps play rook here sometimes as well. Okay, rook check, king here. F2, king came back, okay, that's fine. And now rook g3, the rook activates. But I mean, really, what it's partly making way for the king, but we want to play rook here. Okay, let's see what happened. Rook check, king f4, king up, and a very neat way to exchange rooks here from Gelfand. I mean, there are several ways to win this position, but I think exchanging rooks is absolutely the clearest. So check. Oh, of course, if king takes rook, then king f3, check, and then we take the rook on e2, and then the pawns roll home. Okay, so king f1, black exchanged, and after king e5, actually Nakamura resigned in this position. He'd had enough. Okay, let's see how black wins. White can only wait, really. So let's say f4. Okay, the king comes over. If f3, then maybe white has a little hope with king g3, but it's much better to bring the king in, and then we can advance, and well, we can play king here and put the king on d2, and we're even going to win this bishop with a bit of luck. I mean, it's an appalling position to play, and of course if bishop here, then we roll on, and again these pawns are just going absolutely nowhere. So once you get two connected pass pawns supported by king and bishop, then it's possible to win bishops of opposite colour. So a disappointing start for Nakamura. He was, well, really hoping for a good result here. He said his ambition was to reach the 2800 ELO rating by the end of the year, but if he doesn't pick up soon, I think he's going to be off target. But anyway, a fantastic win from Boris Gelfand, who seized his moment. See you for more Play of the Days. Thanks for watching.